I just got access to the advanced voice mode on ChatGPT right here this morning, and I thought it'd be fun to film my very first conversation with it and share it with you all. I did try the first version a couple of months ago, and I thought it was pretty good, actually, but now that it apparently has gotten better, I'm very curious. And so I have to choose a new voice, and I thought for a topic, I would talk about my dissertation with it, just to see how well it can talk to me about something that I'm fairly knowledgeable about. So I'm going to pick a voice here.
Nice to meet you.
Hey there, can I talk to you about my physics PhD dissertation topic?
Of course. I'd love to hear more about your dissertation topic. What's your research focus?
Yeah, my research focus is on supermassive black hole mass measurement, so specifically on dynamically weighing supermassive black holes with ALMA, the Atacama Large Millimeter Array, and the Hubble Space Telescope.
Wow, that sounds fascinating. Using ALMA and the Hubble Space Telescope to measure black hole masses must involve some intricate techniques. Are you focusing on any specific galaxies or regions of space in your research?
Yeah, typically we're looking at some of the more massive galaxies, so giant elliptical galaxies and lenticular galaxies, because they have typically larger supermassive black holes that have a more pronounced effect on their surroundings.
That makes a lot of sense. Those types of galaxies are ideal for studying supermassive black holes because their influence is more significant and detectable. With the capabilities of ALMA and the Hubble Space Telescope, you're in a great position to uncover some intriguing details. How do you go about analyzing these massive celestial objects?
Well, yeah, like I said, we use ALMA to measure the gas velocities because we can look at the Doppler shift, the radial Doppler shift of the spectral lines. And then for the Hubble Space Telescope, we use the light from the galaxy itself to constrain its gravitational contribution to the total gravitational potential. But before I keep talking, can I ask you a few questions?
Absolutely. Feel free to ask me anything.
Yeah, so to your knowledge base, what do you consider to be the very first black hole mass measurement in modern history?
The first dynamical measurement of a black hole's mass in modern history is often credited to the work on the galaxy M87. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, using stellar dynamics, researchers measured the motion of stars near the galaxy's center, providing evidence for a supermassive black hole. Subsequent observations, especially with the Hubble Space Telescope, helped refine these measurements, firmly establishing the black hole's mass.
Wow, that's incredible. That's correct. Do you know what the very first, maybe a research paper and who was the lead author on those studies were?
The pivotal research on the mass M87 was carried out by Wallace Sargent and his collaborators in the late 1970s and early 1980s. One of the key papers from this research is The Nuclear Region of M87, an observational study published in 1978 with Sargent as one of the lead authors. This work was fundamental in suggesting the presence of a supermassive black hole M87 based on stellar dynamics.
Yeah, that was definitely the first paper in my book. At least that's what I reference in my dissertation, actually. Do you know if M87 has had subsequent black hole mass measurements?
Yes, M87's black hole has been the subject of many subsequent measurements. The most notable recent measurement came from the Event Horizon Telescope, EHT collaboration, which in 2019 produced the first ever image of a black hole's event horizon, showing the shadow of M87's black hole. This observation provided a new, direct method for estimating the black hole's mass, which closely matched earlier measurements, further confirming the existence of a supermassive black hole at the galaxy's center.
So with the advent of like the James Webb Space Telescope and larger telescopes on the way, like the giant Magellan Telescope as well as the Event Horizon Telescope, what other kinds of areas of research do you think we should be pushing with black hole mass measurement?
With advancements in telescope technology and instruments, several exciting areas in black hole research could be pursued. 1. Horizon scale imaging. Building on the EHT's success, more detailed imaging of black holes' event horizons could provide insights into their properties and the surrounding accretion disks. 2. Black hole mergers. With instruments like LIGO and Virgo, gravitational wave astronomy can be expanded to study black hole mergers, offering another method to measure their masses and spins. 3. Black hole populations. Surveying various galaxies to understand the demographics of black holes, from the smallest to the supermassive, could illuminate their formation and growth over cosmic time. 4. High-resolution spectroscopy. Using advanced spectroscopic techniques to study the environments around black holes, focusing on how they interact with and influence their surroundings. 5. Intermediate mass black holes.
Yeah,
Searching.
definitely. Oh, I think I may have hit the limit.
It's
oh, sorry. Did I interrupt you?
Not at all. We're just having a great chat. Is there anything else you'd like to dive into?
No, I think that's it for now. Thank you so much for talking to me. This is the first time talking to you, and it was great.
I'm so glad we got to chat. It was a pleasure talking with you. If you ever want to discuss more about your research or anything else, I'm here. Take care.
So I just finished my initial conversation, and I want to give you my brief post-conversation thoughts as to what I thought about it. I thought it was very interactive, and I can verify that a lot of the things it said, pretty much virtually all of it, was correct in terms of the historical precedent of the field, and ideas for moving the field forward are definitely topics of research that have been discussed and are in the works right now. So it had a very strong grasp of what I was talking about, and it felt fairly fluid. I mean, there were some moments where I was not sure if it had stopped or I had to interrupt it, but comparing that to the first version, which I actually did have a conversation with, it was a lot more smooth. So the first version came out, I think it was in May, and I did have a conversation about it about the same topic, pretty much, about my dissertation work. And that conversation was a lot more maybe choppy. There was less smoothness to it. Like, I'd have to wait a few seconds for it to respond each time. I had to sort of pause and do that, sort of pausing and thinking, or thinking, I should say, but pausing and then formulating a response. And that delay kind of, didn't feel as natural to me as this did. This felt very concise and as if I was talking with a fairly competent, researcher in the field, or someone who's very knowledgeable about my dissertation topic. So that's pretty exciting, because I can imagine in the future these LLMs being kind of acting as if like they're research assistants, right? Like, not only can they maybe help us with our codes and help us formulate things, they can help bounce ideas off possibly, which is like really cool, because sometimes when you are working on a topic and you might be in kind of isolation, kind of how I was during my PhD during COVID, it's hard to sort of have that creative stimulation or having conversations with your peers to discuss ideas. And so having this kind of agent-like approach, having an agent who is, virtually your equal more or less in terms of having the historical knowledge all at its fingertips and being able to interact with you and give ideas, I think that's going to be a very powerful tool moving forward. So that's that. And as a final treat for the video, I know this is pretty much the end, but I will append my very first conversation with the original ChatGPT voice mode at the end here. It was about a 13 or so minute long conversation. I'll just give the raw conversation here so you can listen if you want and compare with the conversation I had with the advanced voice mode. It's on the same exact topic, so you'll hear a lot of the same questions and words being discussed. But I thought it would be nice to have that older version as a reference to see how much progress has been made. And so with that, that's effectively the end of this part of the video. So thank you for watching. And if you want to stick around and listen to the previous conversation, it will begin now. Hey there, how's it going?
Hey, it's going well. Thanks for asking. How about you?
Oh, pretty good. I was just wondering if we could have a conversation about the topic of my PhD dissertation.
Absolutely. What's the topic of your PhD dissertation?
Well, the topic of my PhD dissertation is on the mass measurement of supermassive black holes in early type galaxies.
That sounds fascinating. How do you go about measuring the mass of supermassive black holes in early type galaxies?
Well, the way that we did it for my PhD is that we used this telescope in Chile called ALMA, which is the Atacama Large Millimeter Submillimeter Array. And we use the observations from ALMA that are looking at Doppler shifted spectral lines from gas clouds that are orbiting really close to the supermassive black hole.
That's really interesting. How do the Doppler shifted spectral lines help in determining the mass of the supermassive black holes?
Well, you see, when you have the Doppler shift, the spectral line is going to be shifted away, as in the frequency or the wavelength that we see on Earth is going to be different than the frequency or wavelength that was at the source of that cloud. And because of the relative motion that that cloud is experiencing relative to us here on Earth, the cloud is sort of orbiting in the black hole's gravitational potential, and so it has a velocity, and so we can use the line of sight velocity component that we see here on Earth to measure its velocity.
Got it. So, by measuring these velocities and understanding how the gas clouds move around the supermassive black hole, you can infer the mass of the black hole based on the gravitational influence it exerts on these clouds. Is that right?
That is correct. Have you read a lot of literature on this subject before?
I've read a bit about it, but I'm always eager to learn more. It sounds like your research involves some very precise measurements and detailed analysis. Are there any particular challenges or interesting findings you've encountered in your work?
Yeah, actually, quite a bit. I'd say the main one is that there are quite a bit of uncertainty. There is a lot of uncertainty, I should say, sorry, about these measurements or regarding these measurements, just in terms of the measurement process. I mean, so I did not say that very clearly.
No worries, I understand. The uncertainty in measurements can be a significant challenge. What are some of the sources of this uncertainty in your measurements?
Well, a big major source of uncertainty is we attribute it to the dust extinction of the stellar light in the system because we need to have an estimate of the mass of the stellar component of this galaxy, the stars of this galaxy, and these gas clouds are often associated with a big dust disk, and so the dust will obscure the light from these stars, and it'll make it difficult for us to assess how massive the stars are in this system.
That makes sense. Dust extinction can significantly impact the accuracy of your measurements. How do you typically try to account for or mitigate the effects of dust extinction in your observations?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we use Hubble Space Telescope near infrared images to create color maps. So the difference in wavelength or intensity of light between two different wavelength bands that gives us an assessment of where the dust is, and then we can use that color difference between those two wavelength bands to derive an estimate of how much extinction there should be at a given point in space.
That's a clever approach. Using near infrared images to map dust distribution and estimate extinction sounds very effective. Have you found that this method significantly improves the accuracy of your mass measurements?
I would say yes, in the sense that we get a more accurate understanding of the uncertainty in these systems, and that we report typically a larger range of what the black hole mass could be when this dust is present, and we've shown that it can affect the mass measurement up to the factor of 2 level in some of the more maybe not so robust cases where we don't have a lot of signal from deep within the black hole's sphere of influence in the galaxy.
That's quite significant. It sounds like your work is making important contributions to refining these mass measurements. Are there any specific galaxies you've studied that have been particularly interesting or challenging?
Yeah, I mean, there's this one galaxy, NGC 6861, which is one of the first papers that I wrote for my PhD, or the first paper I wrote for my PhD, and it had this hole, this just deficit of carbon monoxide gas, which is the gas that we primarily use to trace the black hole's gravitational potential. So there was a lack of gas and a lack of dust there, and so there just wasn't any kinematic constraint at the very center of this galaxy that we could use, and so the uncertainty on the black hole of that galaxy was quite high.
That sounds like a real challenge. How did you manage to work around the lack of kinematic constraints in NGC 6861?
Yeah, I mean, so again, this was a matter of essentially creating a range of potential host galaxy profiles that could be reasonably fitted to the data, and looking at the resulting black hole masses that we would get when we incorporated different stellar mass profiles into our dynamical model.
That sounds like a meticulous process. Creating different profiles and assessing a range of possible black hole masses must give you a good understanding of the potential variability. Did you find any surprising results or insights from this approach with NGC 6861?
Yes, and before I continue, I would like to ask you some questions, if that's all right after this one, but I'll answer your questions. So, the surprising thing was that we could effectively uh, increase or decrease the mass of the black hole and just sort of see how well our models fit to the data. And the thing that we realized was that we sort of needed a black hole of at least a couple 100 million solar masses to up to 1 billion solar masses. I think it was about 2 billion solar masses, I think is what the value we had. I don't remember off the top of my head, but we definitely needed a black hole to better explain the observations than not a black hole.
That's a fascinating insight. It must have been rewarding to see how critical the presence of the black hole was in explaining the observations. What questions did you have for me?
Yeah, I'm just curious. To your knowledge, what is like the very first paper on supermassive black hole mass measurement research?
The very first paper that is often credited with pioneering supermassive black hole mass measurement research is the one by Wallace Sargent and his colleagues in 1978. They used stellar kinematics to infer the presence of a supermassive black hole in the galaxy M87. This was one of the first pieces of evidence suggesting the existence of supermassive black holes at the centers of galaxies.
That's great. Yeah, I mean that's definitely what I would consider to be the very first paper to really try this black hole mass measurement approach. I'm really impressed.
I'm glad you think so. It's amazing how far the field has come since then. Do you have any particular favorite breakthroughs or papers in this area that have inspired your work?
Well, I'd like to give a lot of credit to my PhD advisor for his measurement of the black hole mass in NGC 3245. I think this was done in the year 2000, if I'm not mistaken. And it's a tricky galaxy to measure the black hole mass of with the technique we're doing right now because the kinematics aren't as maybe as behaviorally nice or consistent with perfect circular motion as one might like. So it's a tricky one to handle for sure. And to this date, I don't think there's been another measurement of NGC 3245's black hole mass. Are you familiar with that paper? Oh, connection failed. So it looks like I talked too long. the connection failed, so I think it's a good time to just stop and take stock of what I just listened to. It definitely was, for a majority of the time, me just providing it information and teaching it like a student that I would have had like during the summer, who's doing like an internship with me. Um, so I was wrong in the sense that I did have to lead the conversation quite a bit. Perhaps it was just the way that I responded. I wasn't as forceful with saying, "Hey, please be leading the conversation." But I was impressed that I did get the reference about the Sargent et al. Paper. True, it was sort of the very first landmark paper on the subject, I would say. And fun fact, I am part of the academic lineage that consists that goes up to Wall Sargent because my advisor's advisor was Wall. So I guess I'm 3 or 2 generations above me in the academic tree cycle. So anyways, that was interesting. I mean, I could tell I was talking to an AI the whole time, but it's kind of scary how and like somewhat convincing this could be. This definitely gives me vibes like the movie Her, starring Joaquin Phoenix from 2013. I don't know if people have seen that movie. If you haven't, you really should check it out. I think it has a lot to say and is really important for this day and age. So I don't know if this video was useful or entertaining at all, but I just gonna put it out there as it is. Try out ChatGPT, see how you interact with it, and let me know what you think with your interaction of how it goes, and if it impresses you or depresses you or scares you or all of the above. Okay, so with that, I'll end the video right now.